Today, I want to talk about Laos's history, how the country is changing in the context of US China relations and other countries, and how this plays against the narrative that the world is deglobalizing. The 31st Asian Regional Forum recently took place in Laos. How does this event, in the context of the country's history, reveal how the narrative that the world is decoupling is wrong? Laos may be one of the poorest countries in the world, but its history is rich. In fact, its origins may be connected to the expansion of Chinese empires in the late first millennium and the ensuing suppression Thai-speaking people in what is today Yunnan and Guangxi endured. There are Chinese loanwords in older versions of Thai. Even once the Thai settled in Laos, they were influenced by other cultures, most notably India and the Cham people. Today, Buddhism is still important to Laos. Eventually, this cultural mix created Lanxiang, which reigned from 1353 to 1707 as one of Southeast Asia's largest kingdoms before splitting into three due to a succession dispute. The glory of this time remained with the Lao people for the next 2 centuries, as they were conquered by Thailand and some of their members enslaved and transported from their homes. These demographic shifts still affect the region's economy today. While one reason France made Laos a protectorate in the 19th century was due to end this practice, its policies did the opposite of Thailand, move Vietnamese into the country to such an extent that they became the majority in Laos's biggest cities. This was not the only outside influence. China's own religious rebellions at the time caused many to move into Laos, eventually joining with the local people in revolting against the French. After World War II, Laos gained independence, but the country was in disarray. Throughout the turbulent next decades of civil wars in Southeast Asia, Laos's central position would be used by forces from other countries, most notably the North Vietnamese, who maintained bases in the country supporting a local communist insurgency, and used it for supply routes in the Vietnam War. The number of Vietnamese living in the country due to the French cannot be understated either. With this happening in tandem with the Vietnam War next door, the United States began supporting Laos's new government and trained Hmong hill tribes. The Chinese nationalists, having been pushed out of China by Mao, also played a part in northern Laos with help from the CIA, particularly in Luang Prabang. During the Vietnam War, Laos became the most bombed country in history. To this day, an average of 2 people die per month due to US bombs still on the ground, 40% of whom are children. Obama has been the only US president to visit the country. The US did not admit its role in the Laotian Civil War until 1997, Laotian Civil War. China also helped Hmong resistance in Laos in 1979 after it became friendlier with the non-communist world. Today, a large diaspora of the Hmong, who were persecuted under the Laos government or fought against it, live in the US near the Great Lakes. In the 90s and noughts, the Clinton administration and UN wished to repatriate the remaining refugees in Thailand back to Laos, but the Hmong resisted due to fear of persecution. Thanks to human rights organizations and American conservatives, Clinton's wishes did not come to fruition, and the remaining Hmong were brought to the US, many reuniting with family members. Like Vietnam, the communist side of Laos' civil war won out. Their centralized economy caused 10% of the country's population to leave in the latter part of the 20th century. This was the major reason the US banned Laotian companies from receiving investment. Since 1986, the country has liberalized. In 2004, George W. Bush, despite bipartisan opposition due to Laos's human rights record, created normal trade relations with the country. These good relations continued under Obama, who lifted the investment ban, claiming the government was no longer Marxist-Leninist. Since the early 2000s, trade between the US and Laos has risen, though it is still small. The US has played a significant role in foreign aid to help the country deal with health issues and development. For example, US goods imports from Laos totaled $274 million in 2022, up 24.5% from $54 million in 2021, and up 993% from 2012. The US goods trade deficit with Laos was $233 million in 2022, a 25.1% increase over 2021. Despite this, Laos has been one of the fastest growing economies in the world since 2007, averaging 7% GDP growth annually. As it has worked with other ASEAN countries, it has received more foreign investment. Though it still relies predominantly on coal, its hydro and solar power resources have much potential. Another area that has a lot of potential in Laos is Laos's young population. Though the majority of the country's people work in subsistence rice farming, foreign companies have started to see potential in Laos. For example, the South Korean retail company Shinsegae is aiming to begin expanding in the country beginning in 2025. This is not the only foreign involvement occurring in the country. Soromitsu, a Japanese company, is working with Laos central banks to create a blockchain-based quasi-digital currency system. Sajuki Co. is working with Laotian farmers to make dye for colored chocolate, candy, tea, and sake. The US is also aiming to play a larger role in Laos. In 2022, for example, US aid published the following. The Lao National Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the United States Agency for International Development hosted the US-Lao PDR Business Roundtable Exploring Business Opportunities event in October 17th at the Crown Plaza Hotel in Vientiane. The roundtable, organized in conjunction with the official visit to Laos by a delegation from the Washington, D.C.-based U.S. ASEAN Business Council, aimed at assisting Lao and American businesses to expand trade and investment that benefit both countries. One reason for the United States paying more attention to Laos may be due to China's growing relationship with the country. Next to Thailand, China remains Laos's top importer and exporter. Companies such as the PV cell and module manufacturer SolarSpace produce cells at a manufacturing facility in the Sesetha Development Zone, a 30-minute drive outside of Vientiane, the capital. Facilities like this are part of Laos's participation in China's Belt and Road Initiative, or the BRI. Other Chinese enterprises in the zone include Best Garment Zone, which has 2,000 employees and sells knitted garments to Europe, America, and Japan. Japanese, Singaporean, Thai, and other countries have companies in the zone too. Investment has reached $1.5 billion and 6,000 jobs have been created. Thousands of more jobs are apparently on the way too. The biggest and most talked about aspect of China-Laos relations in recent years has been the construction of a high-speed railway constructing Vientiane to China's Yunnan province. The two countries hope that this train can boost tourism. The project also connects Laos better to Thailand. Many hope that this service will bring Southeast Asia closer together as a region. The trains are expected to help Laos increase its trade too. Prior to its construction, Laos's place as a landlocked country meant its shipments needed to go through Thailand, thus making costs higher. With these trains, Laos can focus more on exporting minerals, agriculture, and manufacturing produce. China's involvement has not come without problems, though. Some in English media have called its investment in Laos a debt trap. After all, China accounted for half of the country's debt as of 2023. This was not helped by the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused terrible inflation and brought the country to the brink of default, as the Washington Post said in 2023. But Laos is also an economy in distress. Inflation rose to more than 41% at its peak this spring. The Laotian kip has depreciated more than 53% against the US dollar. In a country where virtually everything is imported, the statistics translate into sacrifice. Farmers who can no longer afford fertilizer, children who have dropped out of school to work, and families cutting back on healthcare. The China-led strategy was meant to protect Laos from these shocks. Instead, it led to them. Laos is struggling to repay the billions it borrowed from China to fund the hydroelectric dams, trains, and highways, which have drained the country of foreign resources. As repayments drag, external debt is rising, a vulnerability exacerbated by the pandemic and rising global fuel and food prices. The Aid Data Research Lab at William & Mary, which tracks China's lending, calculates Laos's total debt to China over an 18-year period starting in 2000 to be at $12.2 billion, about 65% of gross domestic product. Add in loans from other agencies and countries, and Laos's debt stands at more than 120%, according to Aid Data. There is no country in the world with a higher amount of debt exposure to China than Laos. It is a very, very extreme example, said Brad Parks, Aid Data's executive director. Laos went on a borrowing spree and got in over its head. This is not to say that others have argued against this narrative. Laos's president, Thongloun Sisoulith, believes the jet trap idea is false and that average Laotians don't see it as such. Instead, they see the investments as an opportunity for the country. Take the below analysis from the Asia Pacific Foundation of Canada. Although Chinese overlending may have contributed to Laos's debt problems, Singling out China as the sole culprit is an oversimplification. Several dam projects have also been funded by countries such as Japan and France, while the recently opened Lao-China Railway may have positive effects on Laos' economic recovery. However, the lack of information and transparency behind China's lending has allowed for cherry-picked evidence to be used to bolster suggestions that China is debt-trapping Laos. For example, in March 2021, Laos signed a 25-year concession agreement that gave a majority Chinese company the rights to build and manage power grids in the country. Although the power grid development project is a joint venture between Laos and China, Laotian officials have stated that they do not have the ability to manage and operate the power lines, citing the large foreign debt and domestic economic problems, while praising China's finances, technological aptitude, and manpower. Similarly, in September 2021, Laos and China celebrated the opening of the Nam O hydropower project in the country's north, consisting of 7 plants developed by the Power Construction Corporation of China under China's BRI. This $2.8 billion investment also comes with a concessional agreement, allowing China to operate the dams for the first 29 years. Despite perceptions that these are examples of China debt-trapping Laos, most Laotian officials view the projects as opportunities to build the infrastructure needed to pursue their long-standing goal of becoming a major energy exporter to generate foreign income. Laotian officials say such concessions to China are a necessary measure due to the grave economic situation facing the country. China's strong geopolitical interest in Laos, combined with extensive financial investments by Chinese investors and the political relations shared by the socialist leadership of the two countries, have resulted in China instead having protective policies towards Laos. Nishizawa Toshiro, former advisor to the government of Laos, has argued that China would never let Laos go into default over external debt obligations for the above-mentioned reasons, rejecting a major part of the Chinese debt trap argument. When asked about this debt trap problem, Thunglone Sisolith suggested that other countries were welcome to come build the projects China was helping with if they weren't okay with them. It's also important to notice that China's railway led to many of the US's bombs being removed during construction, with less than 1% of these bombs having been cleared even after Obama pledged $90 million to clear them. One must ask whether China has done a better job than America in fixing the USA's mess that it left behind. If this isn't a call for countries to see the potential in working with Laos to improve its situation, it surely shows that there is reason for the world not to believe we are decoupling. Obviously, there are many countries investing in Laos now. Perhaps instead of moaning over China's involvement, others should join in. Other Asian countries, even American allies, seem to be doing just this.